Hello and welcome to Text Appeal. I am your host, Travis Villalpando, and I'm really glad to bring you the second installment of the Paradise Lost the novel series. Today I'm going to be talking about chapter 2, and I'm really just going to be rolling right ahead from where we ended with chapter 1. So if you remember, Abdiel, the brave seraph, stands in front of Lucifer as he approaches God atop the flaming mount in the name of his treacherous rebellion. And Abdiel swiftly strikes Lucifer, and Lucifer is blown 10 paces backward. And so then the story just immediately rolls into the next chapter from that plot point that I last ended on. And so today my materials for this study, I have here some detailed notes on chapter 2. I have my Bible here in hopes that, really it's just here more or less for decoration because we're expanding on Judeo-Christian themes, of course, so I think that it's fitting to have my Bible here beside me. It kind of makes me feel at ease when talking about such topics. And then lastly, there's some dialogue that the Son of God has here at the end of this chapter that I highlighted from the actual text, not any paraphrasing or anything like that, on my laptop here. So at some point I'll be bringing up my laptop. So yes, this will be uncut. This is an opportunity for me to practice speaking extemporaneously directly to an audience as I hope to become a public speaker one day. So yes, thank you for tuning in. This is Text Appeal. All right, so as I had already said, we're rolling right into chapter 2. And chapter 2 is titled The Battle of Angels. And the first plot point I have for you is that the battle begins. And the specific language used in the text is, quote, vaulted with fire, each host rushed against the other with ruinous assault and inextinguishable rage. It is said that God, this is my commentary on that quote, it is said that God lowers the power of the loyal angels as well as the rebellious ones so that they do not destroy heaven. So immediately this speaks to the futility of Lucifer's attempt to usurp the throne. He simply could not do it no matter what. So the battle begins between the angels that are loyal to God and those who are following Lucifer. And it says, with fire they assault each other in an attempt to ruin the other, And so this is not some type of graceful or pretty battle, although the angels themselves are quite full of grace, right? The way in which they attack each other is like incomprehensible to the human mind. And that's why I really enjoy reading this story, because my mind just lights up with this wonderful imagery. And so the main takeaway from that plot point, though, is that God, it directly says that God basically lowers the power of the angels so that they can't destroy heaven. So the angels, of course, and the demons, so to speak, are super powerful, and they have this capacity to destroy heaven if God didn't kind of like just turn the volume down on their power a little bit. And that just speaks to God and the Son of God's power and their divinity in this story. So the next plot point is the battle continues and comes to an interesting midway point when Lucifer and Michael, the prince of celestial armies, meet up to fight one-on-one. So this part is amazing because this story, this novel is really developed through the dialogue. Of course, there's action, some awesome scenes being described of swords clanging together. But really, I find the most interesting parts of the story to be embedded within the dialogue here. So Michael and Lucifer meet up in the middle of the battleground. And Michael opens with, author of evil, unknown until the crime of your rebellion, these acts of hateful strife will justly fall heaviest upon your own head. Heaven casts you out from all her confines. The seat of bliss does not endure the works of violence and war. Evil go with you and your offspring, your wicked crew, once upright and faithful, now proved false, instilled with your malice. Go all to the ordained receptacle of evil, hell. Lucifer then responds with, I have sought you specially over all this battleground, as he swiftly approaches Michael. Nor will I flee from your utmost force, though it be aided by him called Almighty, much less expect airy threats to subdue me, where with deeds you cannot. So really the main takeaway here is that Michael is announcing to Lucifer that really your attempt at dethroning God is quite silly, and he basically says, you are now going to be cast into hell. And Lucifer kind of responds by saying, that's an airy threat. That threat doesn't hold any weight, and you really don't scare me, Michael, even though your power is aided by him who is, quote, called Almighty. And it's important to know that it says called Almighty because it speaks to how Lucifer is undermining God in this, through his dialogue, because he's saying, maybe, just maybe, I would have a reason to fear you, Michael, if he who is Almighty was aiding you, but instead it's he who you call Almighty. And of course, this is the attitude of Lucifer through and throughout the story. And Lucifer once again says, I have sought you specially over the battleground. So, as I mentioned before, Lucifer is a high-ranking angel or high-ranking archangel prior to his rebellion, and so he's obviously a powerful character. There's really no doubt about that. And he seeks out Michael as another character, probably equal in his power, right? They're both beneath God in this hierarchical structure, but they're both immensely powerful. And so Lucifer's actually excited to take on Michael, to really prove himself. And Michael basically says, you're going to get cast into hell, and your sin, your errors that you are making here are going to fall on you the hardest. And I know that there's a biblical idea that the serpent's head will be stepped on by the Son of God or something like that along those lines. And this moves us right into Lucifer kind of giving a little bit more dialogue, saying, you really couldn't defeat us if you tried, Michael, because I know that your God is a fraud, and I know that even if you subdue us temporarily, or if you, because it's important to note that the angels can't die except for complete annihilation by God. That's kind of, the author allows the audience to know that. However, I don't think that the angels necessarily understand death, so to speak. Death isn't even really a concept until the rebellion of Lucifer anyway. And so Lucifer continues by saying, you will not be able to make us surrender. And even if we are defeated, you cannot kill us, and we will surely rise again. Michael then takes this opportunity to strike Lucifer with a mighty flaming sword. And Lucifer encounters pain and wound for the first time. So I think it's really fitting that the author of all evil is the first entity, angel, to encounter pain and wound, and he's taken aback by this feeling of pain, which he never felt before as an angel, of course, when Michael slashes him. I believe it's through like the midsection or something like that, and it even says that some nectar flows similar to how a human would bleed from Lucifer's body. And that's quite interesting to me, that in a sense these angels can bleed. So one idea that's really interesting, that's kind of embedded in Paradise Lost, if you do some studying on Paradise Lost, and even just the Bible as such, you'll understand that there's a heavenly order and there's a rank amongst beings, and it goes all the way from all of the forms of life. So for example, I think lifeless matter itself, we might think of the things that make up our universe at the material level. You could say they're alive, but even in biology, we don't really claim that matter is alive, so to speak. Of course, with chemistry, it interacts with each other, and then those interactions between different chemical properties obviously somehow are involved in what we understand as life. And so then, for example, let's just take plants, right? So plants are alive, and we recognize that in modern science as well as in our ancient texts, that plants are alive, except plants have a body, but they do not have sentience at all, right? Now, animals are like a step above plants in this heavenly order, because animals have a body, but they also have some degree of sentience, so to speak. They obviously are like causal agents in the universe. Not to say plants aren't, but you could kind of see what I mean. For example, it's not evident that plants have the same type of consciousness that animals do, and it's really not evident that animals have the same type of consciousness that humans do. So we can see this kind of stratification between different organisms in life. And then so from animals we get to humans, and humans have a body, and we also have self-consciousness, and we're also made in the image of God. And then above humans, there are the angels and I guess the demons, the evil spirits that have not only a body and a mind, but they also have heavenly power, or hellish power, of course, after Lucifer's invention of evil. And then we have God and the Son of God, who are, as far as I understand, are equals, but they hold true divinity and omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. And so I really like this idea that there's this kind of rank amongst the angels and things like that. But we see that we're really one step down from the ultimate power of God when we watch Michael and Lucifer battle it out. And Lucifer, of course, encounters pain, but he's healed really quickly. And that was kind of that whole point I was trying to go off on. And then it says that the fight is described as fairly even between Michael and Lucifer. It's like an epic battle. I recommend you read it yourself. And the angels in their pure form are described more like planets than people. The text even says to envision two planetary spheres colliding with one another in fierce opposition. So once again, the story is trying to convey these heavenly events to our mortal minds, to the limits of our ability to have these images dance around in our head. Still really awesome though, to kind of stand on the edge of our understanding to try and comprehend what it would be like for Michael and Lucifer to battle it out. There is then a lot of descriptive text that talks about Gabriel, Uriel, Abdiel, Raphael, and other angels defeating the rebel angels, although not easily. So it kind of goes into detail about how the battle's unfolding. It says that Uriel and Abdiel subdue these other two angels, of which their names escape me at the moment. And then it kind of goes back to this point that the battle's been taken, it's been like 2 days, and they've been struggling against one another fiercely. Lucifer standing, quite courageous, I would say. You have to give it to Lucifer that he's, although the proud angel and the envious angel, and really a lowly creature in the eyes of God, and we should kind of think of him as a lowly creature as well. That doesn't take away from the undeniable fact that Lucifer is a courageous person and a powerful angel, because it takes a lot of courage to do what he's doing, but it's just the improper placement of courage is his downfall. And so it says that the angels loyal to God are described as undamaged, while the rebels are basically in shambles and they feel fear and pain. So the battle kind of comes to this standstill, and they return to their camps. And the loyal angels are just like in in maybe Greek or Roman times, we hear about the formations that they had. Like if you watch the movie 300, and they're all like, with their shields and their spears, and they're in like a perfect formation. And it really likens the angels that follow God to kind of these warriors that are in unison, and it's like this great harmony. And that's juxtaposed against the rebellious angels, who are kind of in trouble at this moment. They're in fear, and they've all felt pain for the first time, and they're really getting down on themselves. They're not really, they don't have that same vigor and fierceness as they once did a couple of days prior when they began this rebellion. And so then next, Lucifer then gives a speech. Let me pick this up again real quick. Lucifer gives a speech about how they must rise again, because it is his mission to destroy heavenly order and to replace it with a hellish reign. This actually does accomplish the feat of refueling the demons, and the battle continues. That is until the Son of God promptly steps in. So I'm kind of speeding past a lot of details that I would say are important if you're reading the whole story, but for the sake of this recap, we get Lucifer, who kind of picks up the fallen rebellious angels and says, look, were we not expecting this pain? Were we not expecting resistance from the angels that we know are as powerful as us? Of course, if we're to take over the throne, then of course we need to endure this pain. And Lucifer, he's still set in his ways about rebelling. He has no intention to repent, really. And at this point, there's an interesting switch from this battle of angels to where the Son of God is about to step in and really do away with this war. Now God tells the Son of God that it has been 2 days of struggle between the two forces, and that it is time for the Son to put an end to this war in heaven. God then states that he has allowed the battle to go on, really, but now the Son is to decide how the third day goes. The Son of God approaches the rebels and tells them that their time is up. This is a quote directly from the Son. Oh no, actually it's not a quote from the Son, but it's a quote directly from the text, and I'm about to pick up my laptop here in a second, that describes as the Son approaches on the third day of battle. Relentlessly to the bounds of heaven, the Son drives them out, and the demons are so terribly afraid of the power that the Son of God possesses that they jump into They jump into hell rather than stand against him. Lucifer is, of course, included in this effort to escape the power of the Son of God. So yeah, here, now allow me to open up my laptop just a moment, because I want to read directly the dialogue between God and the Son of God, as well as the Son of God to the rebellious angels. So here it says, as dawn of the third morning of war in heaven began to shine, the chariot of God rushed forth with whirlwind sound, flashing thick flames. Steered by no coachman nor stallion drawn, it was itself living spirit with instinct, conveyed by 4 wondrous, multi-faced cherubic shapes. Now this is just describing the chariot of God as the Son of God approaches, I believe. And it says here, let me go back just a little bit here. It says, it describes God's dialogue to the Son of God, kind of commanding him to go and finish this battle. Thus have I permitted 2 days past, the third is yours, beloved reflection of my glory. For you have I ordained it, that the glory may be yours in ending this great war, since none but you can end it. Now manifest your deserved right by sacred unction, to be heir and to be king. Go then, mightiest in your Father's might, ascend my chariot, guide the rapid wheels that shake heaven's foundation, and bring forth all my war. There let them learn as they like to despise God and Messiah. So God commands the Son of God to go and show them what they're made of, and to show the rebel angels that really I was allowing you guys to have your little fight with these other angels, to kind of see how it would go, maybe more or less. I don't think God takes this as some type of joke necessarily, but he definitely is about to really show them who's boss, so to speak. And it says here that far off his coming shone, attended with 10,000 saints and 20,000 golden chariots, half on each hand, the great ensign of Messiah, borne aloft by angels, his sign in heaven, blazed far and wide, but was first seen by his own, Michael's command. Surprised by unexpected joy, they stood in awe at his miraculous advance, enthroned in sapphire, riding on the wings of cherubim, sublime in the crystalline sky. Immediately Michael called back his army, spread wide in battle, and prepared to organize them under their supreme head. Now, it kind of has a little bit more of this detail of Jesus or the Son of God approaching. And it says here, the sight of his glory renewed their envy, and aspiring to his height, they rallied their re-embattled powers to fierce rebellious fight, while the Son of God addressed all his host. So right there, that's talking about the rebellious angels, and their envy of the power of God and the power of the Son of God is renewed here, especially Lucifer's. And it says here, stand now in bright array, and rest this day from battle. Your warfare has been faithful to God and fearless in his righteous cause. But the punishment of this cursed crew belongs to his hand only, or to whose hand he alone appoints. So right there, the Son of God is addressing the loyal angels and saying, it is time for you to rest, as it's my time to step in and put an end to this battle here. And then it says, let me find here what he says to address directly the rebellious angels. Give me just one moment, stick with me here. Therefore to me is their doom assigned. Now they shall have their wish to try with me in battle, which of us proves stronger, they all or I alone against them. So Jesus basically offers up a challenge to all of the rebels and says, you wanted to get a piece of God? Well, here I am, and we'll see if all of you banded together as one while I let these other angels rest and watch from the side, if you can take on my power. And then it says, and his countenance changed into terror, too severe to behold. At once the cherubic four spread their starry wings, and the orbs of his fierce chariot rolled as with the sound of torrent flood. It then says that, yet he had put forth not half his strength, for he meant not to destroy, but root them out of heaven. He raised the overthrown and drove them before him as a herd of frightened goats. I like that symbolism, goats. Relentlessly to the bounds of heaven, he pursued them with terrors and with furies, till finally the wary flock found its panicky flight stopped at heaven's end. Here the crystal wall that marks heaven's border rolled inward and opened wide, disclosing a spacious gap into the black, wasteful deep. The monstrous sight struck them with horror, and they reeled backward, but far worse terror urged them from behind. All choice gone, by the thousands headlong, they threw themselves down the verge of heaven, eternal wrath burning after them into the bottomless pit. Disburdened, heaven rejoiced and repaired her separated wall. From the expulsion of his foes, Messiah, sole victor, turned his triumphal chariot homeward to meet his saints, who all stood eyewitness to his almighty acts. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. That's an amazing end to this chapter here. We see that the Son of God is so powerful, and his power is so grand that he kind of offers up that challenge to these demons. And at first they stand there and they're ready to fight, but then his countenance turns from kind of this calm way of speaking eloquently his message about what he's about to do to them, and then it turns into terror. And he uses only half his strength because he doesn't want to annihilate the demons, which I think is something to think about, because I know that this story is a little bit fantastical. I have my skepticism that this actually happened, of course, because this was written by a mortal man, and it's adapting Paradise Lost by Milton, which adapts the Bible itself. So, of course, the story is kind of it's very dramatic, of course. But it's still important to think about the message that's kind of embedded here. Well, we think of virtues, the classic virtues that are personified through the angels as in this spiritual war against the sin and the personification of sin through the demons or the rebellious angels. And I like this idea that, of course, this is why it leads into kind of how we understand the world, that the sin does not go away. They are cast into hell and out of heaven, but they do survive. And I think that speaks to the power of sin. I mean, although God, I think, could annihilate sin logically enough if he really intended to, but the point here is that God knows that to allow his world, his creation, his universe to play out the way in which he envisioned it, he needs to allow these sorts of things to happen. And he can see all, and he can see into the future, of course, and he has a plan for us. And that's really a Judeo-Christian idea that is being expressed and investigated by this here. And so, to kind of finish off here, I just want to talk about how we should prepare going into the third chapter here. Because the first chapter, revolt in heaven, so we learned about how Lucifer's breast was filled with envy and pride, and so then he gathers up a rebellion against God. And then the battle begins, and then this chapter, of course, just to give a quick recap, is Michael and Lucifer. I think the big part of it is Michael and Lucifer meeting in the middle and having this dialogue about, Lucifer, you're going to fail, like it's not even a question, and Lucifer being real stubborn in his attempt to dethrone God, and he really kind of scoffs at Michael, but Michael shows him that Michael is not one to be played with, and neither is Michael to be played with because he has the help of God Almighty. And then there at the end of the story, there is really no way in which you could doubt the omnipotence of God and the Son of God, because as the Son of God approaches with even half of his strength, it drives the rebel angels out of heaven, and instead of being cast out, like the Son of God isn't described as even attacking them. They actually are they tremble in fear and they jump into hell. And so the message to take away from that is that goodness in its purest form against evil in its purest form, really makes evil bow down to the power of virtue. And so that's kind of my point in creating this series here, and a lot of the reason why I focus on a lot of Judeo-Christian topics, because I'm not sure I, without skepticism, can believe in religion in any dogmatic sense, but I think that this book here has something very profound and wise to tell us about ourselves and about human nature. And of course, as this novel unravels, we'll see man be introduced as a character and man's place amongst all of this spiritual war going on. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I am super happy to have this opportunity to practice my speaking, to allow myself to articulate my own ideas, to read great texts, and then to comment on them. So yeah, I would really appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and share this video. Stay tuned. Probably in about a week's time, I'll go over chapter 3, which is titled Creation, and maybe I'll even read directly from the Bible for that one, because chapter 3 of Paradise Lost, the novel, is really just an extended description of Genesis 1, where God creates the earth. So of course, heaven is already created, and then as a result of the rebellion in heaven by Lucifer, hell is created, and then the demons are cast into hell, and then now we're going to see the creation of earth. So I'm super excited to talk about that, and yeah, have a good day. May God bless you, and may you remember that virtue in the final analysis triumphs over sin.